Hello everyone, welcome to Study IQ. In this video, I will bring to you the full analysis in English language for the PIB Press Information Bureau News for 4th of July 2017. If you want to prepare for UPSC, one of the best ways to prepare is to buy our pen drive course. This is the number that you have to dial. Course is prepared by me, Dr. Mahipal Singh Rathore, IS Bhumika Saini and Dr. Shri Ravi Agrahari. We four have prepared and it's an amazing course. If you want the PDF of this video, you just have to go to our website studyiq.com and click on downloads and you will be able to download the PDFs. The PDF for this video has already been shared in our Telegram group and on the website. So here we go. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he addressed the young IAS officers. So he addressed the IAS officers of the 2015 batch and he was very honest about some of the things. For example, he said that India has not progressed enough. India has not progressed as much as it should have. And he said that, the countries which got independence after India, they have achieved more than India. And even though those countries, they did not have enough resources, not in the order of what India has, still they developed more than India. So the onus lies on us now to get our act together and to grow at optimum pace. And he also said that there are shortcomings in our administrative system and it is quite fragmented. And this fragmented administrative arrangement does not allow the IAS officers to have a collective wisdom. The collective capabilities are undermined and that is why we are not able to grow at an optimum level. So he urged the new IAS officers of the 2015 batch to do proper training, that is a 3-month program of assistant secretaries. And he said that don't fear, if you have to ask anything, ask your seniors and grow and help the country. That is what he said. And Dr. Jitendra Singh was also present. Dr. Jitendra Singh is our Minister of State for Personnel, Public Grievances and Pensions. Moving on, President of India Pranab Mukherjee, he congratulated America on their Independence Day. So today is 4th of July. That means today is Independence Day of America. America was long under the imperialism of, that time imperialism was heavy and UK, the Britishers had also ruled over America for a long time. So America got its independence on 4th of July. And please note that America is world's oldest democracy. And India is also a democracy. That is one connecting link between India and America. So India is world's largest democracy in the sense that India's population is more than US. And America is world's oldest democracy. So therefore we share a common link and a strategy, a bonhomie between the two countries is possible. Now let's talk about the main issue of today, which is agriculture related. So our agriculture minister, Dr. Shri Radha Mohan Singh, he gave a wonderful speech and whatever he said holds a lot of value for your essay writing. Now I'll tell you, see, there are two types of agriculture that is mostly carried out in various countries. In developed countries, you have agriculture like this, which is called intensive farming. That is on a very large level, and there is a lot of use of machinery, lot of use of power and electricity in this type of farming. It is at a big level. And you have countries like India where there is subsistence farming. That is the farming that is just enough to fulfill our needs and our livelihood. So at a very small level we'll do it. The fields are also small and a lot of people are engaged. Manpower is more and machinery power is less. So therefore, Radha Mohan Singh, who is our agriculture minister, he said that right after Modi came to power in 2014 May, we started something known as Submission on Agriculture Mechanization. What is the meaning of mechanization? See, when you use lot of machines in agriculture, then it is called mechanization. For example, you use tractors, you use tube wells, you use all the latest instruments, gadgets in agriculture, then that is an example of mechanization of agriculture. So agriculture in India is still very, very traditional. People are engaged. There is a lot of cattle that is used in the agriculture and still the mechanization is not at the level where it should be. So that was the concern of our agriculture minister, Radha Mohan Singh. So he said that there is now an additional demand for energy in agriculture and that has to be met by mechanization and not by the animated sources of energy. What is the meaning of animated sources? The energy that is derived from human beings and animals, that is called animated sources of energy. So we can't rely on animated sources. We have to mechanize our agriculture. And whatever he said is very, very important. So he said that he said all these things at the inter-session meeting in Srinagar, Sher-e Kashmir International Conference Center. And basically his concern was this, that in India, we have very small farms, and it is very difficult to provide power to these small farms. So ensuring the availability of adequate farm power for small farms will be a big challenge. And I'll tell you why. So basically, when you have big farms, then mechanizing it is easy. In fact, machines, they work best in the big farms, as you have seen in the developed countries. Whereas if you have a very small acre land, then how will you use machines in that? And in India, there are a lot of challenges, which I'll discuss later. So he said that the mechanization is one of the most important factors for sustainable development of the agriculture sector. Sustainable development we define as the development which fulfills the need of the present generation without compromising the needs of the future generation. So he said that if we mechanize our agriculture, then what will happen? We will have increased production, of course, because machines, they increase productivity. It will reduce our agriculture deficit. It will reduce the cost of various agriculture works through the better management of costly inputs, especially in the long term. And it will increase the productivity of natural resources. Now, agriculture, there is a huge wastage also in India. So if we mechanize the agriculture, then the wastage will also be reduced. And our Minister of State for Agriculture is Mr. Sudarshan Bhagat. He was also present on this occasion. Now, let me tell you what exactly is a mechanized farm. Let's say there is a farm, there is a field, okay, and it is completely mechanized. That is, full work will be done by the machines. For example, plowing. What is plowing? Just before you sow the seeds, you try to till the soil, so that there is proper aeration in the soil and there is a contact in the environment, nitrogen fixation can be better, replenishment of nutrients can take place, and many other factors. So plowing is done by tractor. The sowing of the seeds and applying fertilizers are done by the drill machines. And when the plants, they grow, then you reap them or you harvest them by the harvest thresher. So almost every work is done by the mechanized machines. And therefore, mechanization of agriculture involves the use of different machineries in farming operations, right from plowing to the marketing of the produce. Now, please note that mechanization, it can be either complete or it can be partial. What is the meaning of complete or partial? So, if the entire work in your agriculture farm is done by the machines, that is complete mechanization. But if only a part of the work is done by machines and remaining work is done by human beings or cattle, then it is partial. So, which one is better for India? Complete mechanization or partial mechanization? Let's see. So this will be covered in the true or false. There are two statements. You have to tell which one is true, which one is false. First statement is, in the developing countries, in the third world countries like India and a lot of African countries, complete mechanization of agriculture is the best way to increase productivity, right? And the second statement is, the demand for food grains in India is on a steady decline since 2014. So both of these statements are true. One is true, one is false. Both are false. What is the answer? So you can pause the video, think about it. So the answer is both the statements are false. So I'll tell you how. So, let's take an example of a developed country. Let's take an example of, for example, America. What happens in America? Let's say this is your farm and this is a big farm. So typically in America, there are big farms. Okay, population is less. And what is happening in countries like India? For example, I own a farm. So it will be split between my two sons. The second generation, it will be split into 4 or more. Then like that. So farms in India, the agriculture fields in India are becoming smaller and smaller. Another thing is that a lot of farmers are moving out of agriculture in India. And what they do is they sell a part of their land. So again, the land which is remaining will become small. Third reason is sometimes the agriculture land is acquired by the government. So then the agriculture fields are becoming small. So there are n number of reasons why the fields and farms are becoming smaller and smaller. So on smaller farms, using machines is very, very difficult. Also, it is not cost effective, because when you use machines on a large farm, then only it is cost effective. In a small farm, it is not cost effective. So that is one. Second, in India, you have lot of labor. Okay, you have cheap labor available. So farmers are not motivated to use machines. Then we don't have enough technology. We don't have enough skill also. For example, it took our farmers a lot of time to learn about machinery in agriculture, and now also central government has launched a lot of apps, but seldom the farmers use apps. So it takes a lot of time to adopt new technology in India. So skill development is less. Then we don't have enough personnel who can run these machines. Then education is less. Then also we have huge labor. So why do we need machines? If our agriculture is done by machines tomorrow, then what will happen to rural employment? And supply of labor is abundant, and also farmers don't have enough capital. See, most of the farmers in India, they work on somebody else's farm. So you have the rich farmers and you have very poor farmers. There are none in between. So therefore, they don't have enough capital to invest, and you have cheap labor available. So in America, in countries like America, it is full mechanization, complete mechanization which takes place. In countries like India, if you do full mechanization, then there are a lot of problems. For example, what will happen to the cattle? India has the largest cattle in the world. So what will happen to that cattle if all the work is done by machines? Secondly, what will happen to the rural employment? Now the people are engaged in agriculture. They are earning their livelihood. If, for example, there is a farm and on 50 workers are working, now after machine, of course, let's say only 25 are working, what will happen to the remaining 25? We are already struggling with providing jobs for the urban people and urban poor. What will happen if the rural employment increases beyond a threshold? So it can become very messy, and therefore India cannot have complete mechanization. Now let me tell you what are some of the advantages of mechanization. So first, of course, there is increase in the productivity, there is increase in the volume, and the farmers will sell this volume, and therefore they will have economic surplus, which means their income will be increased. Then our labor productivity will increase, because for our productivity will increase. What is productivity? We have very good production, but we have very less productivity. That is the crop that is produced per unit of land is very less, but overall crop produce is more in India. So labor productivity is very less in India. So if they use machines, then for the same output, number of labors will become less, and therefore automatically productivity will be increased. Similarly, the back breaking labor, the very hard work, that requires lot of, the taxing part of agriculture, that is plowing, carrying sand, digging, all this can be done by machines, and relatively easier part like sowing of seeds, etc., can be done by the farmers. So also we will be able to convert our small scale farming to large scale farming, and that is possible only due to mechanization of agriculture. And also sometimes what happens is during the peak seasons there is a shortage of labor. So if there is a shortage of labor, then only machines will work, and we can do intensive cultivation, we can increase our volume, we can export that volume. So these are some of the arguments in favor of benefits of the mechanization. But there are some demerits also. Like I said, it will be a disaster for agriculture employment in India. You know that more than 50% of India directly or indirectly is supported by agriculture. So if all the work is done by machines, mechanization takes place, complete mechanization, then what will happen? In a labor surplus economy like India, it will be disaster. Second, we have very small land. So we have huge number of small and marginal farmers and small and marginal farms. So therefore mechanization of farms is not possible under the present setup. Third, we lack skilled people, trained people, who can run machines. Another important thing is it will depend on the price of oil. So right now price of oil is in check in the international market, but if something happens tomorrow and price of oil increases at the level of 2012 or 13, then it will not be cost effective, because most of these machines, they run with oil. And also regional disparities in the level of income might increase. So for example, the rich states of India like Haryana and Punjab, they will have mechanization, whereas the poor states like Odisha and Bihar, they will not be able to undertake mechanization. So Haryana and Punjab will become even more richer with the use of machines, and Odisha and Bihar will become even more poorer. So this regional disparity can increase. And also what will we will do of cattle? We have a huge cattle population. The most number of cattle is there in India, in the world. So that cattle population will become suddenly unnecessary. And that is why the sixth 5-year plan, it said that unrestricted mechanization, that is complete mechanization of agriculture operations, will not be in the interest of India. And it will severely worsen the rural unemployment problem. It will increase the rural unemployment problem. Therefore, selective mechanization will be adopted. This was what said by the sixth 5-year plan, and all these things you need to include in your essay. Now, one very important thing which Radha Mohan Singh said in his speech. Now you need to include these also. So he said that earlier we used to use only the human energy. For example, if we need to plow our land, then only the human beings did it themselves, or they used animals. That is called the animated sources. So now what is happening is that in the past 60 years, what has happened is that we are using less and less cattle and human beings. So for example, in the year 1960-61, 92.30 farm power, the power that we required on the farm, it was coming from either the human beings or animals. That is, it was coming from the animate sources of energy. But in 2014-15, just when the Modi government took over, the contribution of animate source of power reduced from over 90% to just over 9%. And what happened to the mechanical sources of energy and electrical sources of energy? So in 60-61, it was only 7.70. But if you see now, that is in 2014-15, it was more than 90%. So the goalposts have shifted, the tables have been turned, and now instead of animated sources of energy, we are using the mechanical and electrical sources of energy. But still India is far behind. So he attacked the Congress government. He said that when we came to power in 2014, before that in 43 years, mechanization was very less. Mechanization of farms was less. And how do we measure mechanization? So mechanical power or mechanical energy that we use divided by the cultivable area, whatever is the area that we have. So it will be kilowatt per hectare. So in 1975-76, during the emergency period, it was around 0.48 kilowatt per hectare. And in 2013-14, it had grown to only 1.84 kilowatt per hectare. And he said in the last 2 years, since the Modi government has taken over, we have been able to increase it to, from 1.84 to 2.02 kilowatt per hectare. And this is all because of the efforts of the government and various development schemes in the agriculture sector. He also said something very important. He said that India has had a record production of food in the year gone by. That is the year that ended on the 31st of March 2017, financial year 2017. But he also said that the demand for food grains is continuously increasing, and it has been estimated that by 2025, we will have to produce more than 300 million tons of food every year just to feed our population. So the second statement was also wrong. I gave you two statements. The demand for food grain is actually increasing. How can it decrease when the population is increasing? As simple as that. Now, to give you some important facts, in the 2011 census, we have the census population counting every 10 years, and a lot of other things are also said along with the census. So that time of our workforce, for 54.6%, that is 26 crore 30 lakh people, more than 26 crore people, they were engaged in the agriculture sector. But the number of people in the agriculture sector from 2011 in the just 10 years, it will decrease to only 19 crore. So 7 crore people will move out of agriculture, or they will not be engaged in agriculture. So what will happen because of that? There will be shortage of workforce. Now more and more farmers are coming out of agriculture. Still it will take us a lot of time for enough people to get moved out of agriculture, but still farmers are doing it. So it will decline to only 19 crore, that is 33% only by 2020. And that is why there will be shortage of workforce, and this shortage can only be compensated by the machines. Therefore, mechanization needs to grow very rapidly. Now, my essay question for you. What are the challenges to mechanization of agriculture in India? Now, I am sure you can write it. What are the challenges to mechanization of agriculture in India? First is the oil problem. We are an oil importing economy. That is why we depend on oil. Most of the mechanization is supported by oil. So, if the price of oil increases, then we will not be able to sustain it. Then the most important problem that India faces is the rural employment, because agriculture provides rural employment. That is the biggest problem, as also said by the 6th 5-year plan. Then our farms are very small. So let's see what the Agriculture Minister Radha Mohan Singh said. He said that, ensuring availability of sufficient farm power for small farms will be a big challenge, because on small farms mechanization is very difficult. It is almost impossible. Then he also said that we don't have enough skills. So there are skill barriers. Also, we don't have enough modern technology. Also, the farmers, even if the technology is introduced, it takes them some time before they become acclimatized to the modern technology. That is, these all are the barriers in the, and also what about cattle then? What we will do of the cattle? So all these are barriers to mechanization in India. Now, he also said some very important things. He attacked Congress government. He said that the money that the Congress government spent on mechanization process was very small. For example, in 2012-13, it was only 24 crore rupees, and in 2013-14, it was only 38 crore rupees. So this money was very less for promotion of mechanization efforts. But he said that just as we came to power, we started submission on agriculture mechanization, and the purpose was only one: to promote agriculture mechanization, especially among the marginal farmer and small farmer. And he also said that apart from the SMAM scheme, we are also running other schemes which are also promoting mechanization in some way or the other. Like we have the RKVY, which is the Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana. Rashtriya means National Krishi means agriculture, Vikas means progress, and Yojana means scheme. National Food Security Mission, National Horticulture Mission, and NMOOP, which is National Mission on Oilseeds and Oil Palm. Then he also said that we have been able to establish farm machinery banks. What are farm machinery banks? As the name suggests, farm machinery banks and high-tech hubs. They are basically, they provide custom hiring services, and there is financial assistance that is supported. Also, there are things like 40% of the project cost will be will be bared by the government, and all these will be covered under the Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana and Submission for Agriculture Mechanization. Then he also said that unlike Congress government, which spent a pittance, a very small amount on the mechanization process, in the last 3 years we have spent more than 3,000 crore rupees on mechanization process. Just last year we spent 577 crore, and for this year we have more than doubled that amount. So it is around 1300 crore that we are spending now on SMAM. And some states are doing incredibly well in mechanization, like Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Himachal Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, etc. In fact, Madhya Pradesh has one of the highest agriculture growths in the country. Now let's talk about something else. Let's talk about QRSAM. See, SAM means surface to air missile. See, what is surface to air missile? What is air to surface missile? What is air to air missile? It's very easy. This missile which you see here is surface to air missile. We are launching it from ground, and we are trying to kill a aircraft that is in the air. So it goes from surface to air. Similarly, if I am sitting in an aircraft and I want to destroy some bunker, so I will launch a missile from air that will go towards the surface, that is air to surface missile. But let's say if I am sitting in an aircraft and I have to destroy another aircraft, that will be air to air missile. So there are a lot of types of missile. There is ballistic missile. So ballistic missile, it goes like this. First it goes in a trajectory upward, it leaves the atmosphere, then it comes back into the atmosphere and it is launched at the target. This is the trajectory. Then we also have cruise missile. Cruise missile simply travels in a straight line like an aeroplane and it hits the target. So there are lots of types of missiles, and the latest one we test fired, and it was a successful test firing from the integrated test range in Chandipur in Odisha. We did it, and the name and it is a quick response surface to air missile. And our DRDO, Defense Research Development Organization chief is Dr. S. Christopher, and he has also been given 1 year extension by the government. He was supposed to retire, but he has been given, his tenure has been extended by 1 year. So this is a good news for India. Now another very important news is that one of our biggest shipyard, in fact it is our prime shipyard, the main shipyard in India is the Mazagon Dock Limited. Mazagon Dock Limited. It manufactures the Indian Navy ships. It manufactures tankers, carriers, submarines, frigates, corvettes, and many other important destroyers. So 2 destroyers are very important. They are called Scorpene class submarine. Submarine is, it is submerged in the water, not fully but partially, sometimes fully also, and it can launch missile, it can launch underground attacks, it can do stealth, that is secret attack, etc. So Scorpene class submarine, the first Scorpene class submarine was INS Kalvari. This is extremely important. And the second one was INS Khanderi. In fact, INS Khanderi was built this year in January only. It was commissioned in January this year. INS Kalvari was commissioned last year. These are the 2 very, very important manufactured ships of Scorpene class submarine of Mazagon Dock Limited. And there are other ships also, like these all are manufactured by the Mazagon Dock Limited. Important ones are INS Mysore, INS Ganga, and INS Gomti. So why this Mazagon Dock Shipbuilder Limited is in news? Because it has signed a deal. It has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Defense Ministry, and they are targeting a total of 4,500 crore rupees turnover. Now please note that this Mazagon Dock Limited, it is a mini Ratan company. What is a mini Ratan company? So there are 3 types of companies. Okay, 3 types of government sector company, public sector enterprises, also called PSUs, public sector undertaking. One is called the Maharatan company. These are very, very big companies. The biggest companies in India are the Maharatan company. And there is a criteria also to declare a company Maharatan company, that its turnover should be more than 25,000 crore in 1 year for at least 3 years in a row. And the profit should be more than 5,000 crore for 3 years in a row. So these are very big companies. Like there are only 7 in number, that BHEL, Coal India Limited, GAIL, Indian Oil Corporation, NTPC, ONGC, and SAIL. Now please also note that the most profitable company in India, PSU, public sector company in India, is the Indian Oil Corporation. It overtook ONGC. Till last year ONGC was the most profitable, but this year Indian Oil Corporation became the most profitable public sector company in India. Now GST has been rolled out. We all know it, from 1st of July. It has been rolled out. Goods and Services Tax, which is an indirect tax. Now please note that since now GST is one tax, right? So earlier what used to happen, the trucks, when they used to enter a state, they used to get approvals and there used to be taxes, and it used to lead to long lines of trucks, especially in the night on major highways. So now trucks, they don't need to stop at the check post. So 22 states in India, they have abolished, they have done away with the check post. These are the 22 states. A couple are union territories also, like Delhi and Puducherry. They have done away, they have revoked the check post. But 8 states in India, they are in the process. They have still not abolished the check post, but the process of abolishing the check post is under process. So Assam, Himachal Pradesh, Manipur, Meghalaya, Nagaland, Punjab, Mizoram and Tripura, they have not abolished the check post, but it will happen across the country. Now, another important thing, our cabinet secretary is Mr. Pradeep Kumar Sinha. Remember that cabinet secretary is Pradeep Kumar Sinha, and that's basically the highest a IAS officer can rise to in Indian setup. So PK Sinha is our cabinet secretary, and he had a meeting with the Hasmukh Adhia, Mr. Hasmukh Adhia, who is the revenue secretary, and together they made sure that the GST is implemented in a smooth manner. Also, PK Sinha said that there should not be shortage of the basic commodities, otherwise their prices will increase. And Ashok Lavasa is our finance secretary. Rajiv Gaba, he took over from Rajiv Maharishi as the home secretary, and our defense secretary is Sanjeev Mitra. Now, another important news, Asian Development Bank and India, they have signed 220 million loan agreement for improving the road connectivity and transport efficiency on the state highways of Rajasthan. So basically, Rajasthan is improving its roads. It is building 2000 kilometers of state highway and improving its roads and district roads, etc. So for that, it needs money of $500 million. It's a $500 million project, and 220 million is given by ADB, Asian Development Bank. Now, let me tell you some important things about Asian Development Bank. Its president is Takehiko Nakao. He is a Japanese person because it is a Japanese dominated bank. It is dominated by Japan and USA, which are the highest shareholder in this bank. So as I said, India is the 4th largest shareholder in this bank. There are 67 owners in this bank. We don't use the word members because 67 countries have put their money in Asian Development Bank, so we call them owners. And India is the 4th largest shareholder after US, Japan, China, and then India. And 50th annual meeting, the bank completed 50 years. It was launched in 1966. It was established in 66. It has completed 50 years, and its 50th annual meeting took place this year from May the 4th to May the 7th in Yokohama, Japan. And since it is a Japanese dominated bank, therefore its president is a Japanese, Takehiko Nakao, and headquarters is in Manila, which is the capital of Philippines. According to Asian Development Bank, our GDP will grow by as follows. So in last fiscal, 7.1%, current fiscal, 7.4%, and next fiscal, that is financial year 2019, 7.6%. And it is also important to know the projects which the ADB is financing in India. These are latest current affair. So Asian Development Bank is providing $275 million to support the sanitation and water supply improvement project in Madhya Pradesh. Then it is giving $175 million loan to PGCIL, that is Power Grid Corporation of India Limited, for clean energy. So there are two very, very important solar parks that you need to know. One is the very, very big 2500 megawatt capacity project in Bhadla in Rajasthan, and the other one is the 700 megawatt in Banaskantha in Gujarat, and both are financed by the Asian Development Bank. Please also note that our target is 175 gigawatts of solar power by 2022. Then Asian Development Bank is also financing $157.5 million for the Odisha agriculture project, that is Odisha Integrated Irrigated Agriculture and Power Water Management Investment Program. And it is easy to get loan from ADB because Japan is our friend and US is our friend. And that is why China was very angry, because the 3 biggest banks, that is the IMF, it is controlled by America and European Union. World Bank, again controlled by America and European Union, because they two are the biggest shareholder in IMF and World Bank. So China did not have much say. And so China established 2 years back its own bank, which was called AIIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. It is a China dominated bank. It is also a multilateral bank, that is many countries are a owner of it or members of it. Then Asian Development Bank is also financing very, very important project, 390 million bond to support 709 megawatt projects in 6 states of India. Now let's talk about something else, that is Shri Sanjay Gupta. He has been appointed the chairman of the Society and Board of Governors of IIM Amritsar. So IIM was opened in Amritsar, Golden City, and its chairman of the society and board is Sanjay Gupta. Sanjay Gupta is the chairman of Dainik Jagran. He is the editor-in-chief of Dainik Jagran since 2014, and he is the CEO and whole-time director of Jagran Prakashan. And our sports minister Vijay Goyal, he congratulated Indian women's cricket team. They took the payback for the men's team. Men's team was beaten in the Champions Trophy by Pakistan badly. So Indian women's cricket team, they beat Pakistan badly. So they dismissed Pakistan for only 74 runs and they won the match by 95 runs. So our Minister for Sports and Youth Affairs, Vijay Goyal, congratulated the women's cricket team. Now let me talk about a very important issue. Although I will cover this issue at much length tomorrow, because more will be available tomorrow, because today is only the first day and PM has just reached Israel. So tomorrow I will substantiate it, but for the sake of discussion of the topic, I will tell some very, very important things that you need to remember. So Pradhan Mantri is going to Israel. He is in Israel as I speak, and after that he will go to Germany. Why he will go to Germany? It is the 12th G20 summit. Okay, G20 is a group of 19 countries plus European Union. That makes it 20. So if somebody says in G20 you have 20 countries, no, you have 19 countries and European Union. And European Union has many countries. So the number is of course more than 20. So Prime Minister will be in Israel from 4th to 6th of July, and right after that he will land at Hamburg city, the beautiful Hamburg city in Germany for G20 summit. India is a member of G20. Please note, India is also a member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. India became a member in 2015 along with Pakistan. India is also a member of Mekong Ganga Corporation. Mekong Ganga Corporation. So you should know India is a member of which organization and which not. India is not a member of ASEAN. India is not a member of G7. So like that. Anyways, so Pradhan Mantri was very, very excited because Netanyahu called him his best friend, and Pradhan Mantri said that I am going on the invitation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. Please note that in Israel, Prime Minister is the real head. He has the real executive powers, just like the Prime Minister of India. And President is not powerful at all. He is just a ceremonial position, just like India. So India and Israel, they have completed 25 years of diplomatic ties. Our diplomatic ties with Israel started in 1992. And Modi said that when I go there, our honorary Prime Minister said, we will talk about terrorism for sure. In fact, when he met Donald Trump earlier this month, he talked about terrorism. And he will also meet the President Reuven Rivlin, who is not very popular in Israel, but he's not a very powerful person anyways. But he was in India last year in November. So why is Israel so important for us? Israel is one of the closest friend along with Russia, Japan, US. So Israel has always stood by us in thick and thin. It is an all-weather friend. So in the 62 war against China, 65 Pakistan and 71 Bangladesh liberation war against Pakistan, Israel gave us arms and ammunition. Israel has given us these types of arms. It has given us AWACS, that is Airborne Warning and Control System, Aerostat Balloon, Barak 8, this is very, very important, surface-to-air missile, Spider, again, surface-to-air missile, very, very important. So difference is Spider is a short-range surface-to-air missile and Barak 8 is the long-range and medium-range. Then anti-tank guided missile, Green Pine radar for our anti-ballistic missile battery. It is also giving us technology so that we can manufacture Galil sniper rifle, Tavor assault rifle and Negev machine gun. It is also it will also give us 10 Heron armed drones, which are so powerful, they are almost as powerful as the American aircrafts. And Israel, let me tell you, Israel also helped India in the 1999 Kargil war. Israel, even though there was a pressure from US, because if you remember in 1998, we did a nuclear test in India. In the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, America was not happy, so it imposed military and economic sanctions on India, but Israel still helped in 1999. And so in 1992, it was the first time that we had the diplomatic ties. That time our Prime Minister was visionary and very, very eminent Narasimha Rao, who is the only Prime Minister from non-Hindi belt. He was from Andhra. And the full diplomatic ties, they commenced in 1992. Even though India had recognized the formation of Israel in 1950 only. Then Ariel Sharon, he was the first Israeli Prime Minister to visit India in 2003. But before that, in 1997, the first Israeli president to visit India was Ezer Weizmann, and Israeli president right now is Mr. Rivlin. He came to India last year in November 2016. He was the second Israeli president to visit India. So Modi is the first Indian prime minister to be visiting Israel. And now let me criticize him for some reason. Modi is not visiting Palestine. That is the problem. So tomorrow I will tell the positives of this visit. Today I am criticizing. Okay. So it is the 50th year of the Israeli occupation of Palestine. And you remember in the 1967, there was a 6-day Arab-Israeli war. And after that war, Israel had annexed, it has encroached upon the Palestinian territories of the West Bank, East Jerusalem and Gaza Strip. And it has been 50 years, it is still in the possession of Israel. Lot of part of Palestine has been encroached upon by Israel. So in 2017, earlier this year, United Nations had also passed a resolution against Israel. It condemned Israel for its occupation, and Israel was also building a lot of settlements in the West Bank. So Narendra Modi said that he will meet his best friend Netanyahu. Why is Palestine so important for India? So I'll tell you that. So in 1936, that time India was still not independent. Our first Prime Minister, that time he was of course not the Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, freedom fighter, the great freedom fighter, he had informed the Zionist emissary, his name was Emanuel Olswanger, that he cannot tolerate Palestine occupation. And why he was saying so good things about Palestine, Nehru? Because that time Congress was divided. I mean to say there was a Congress and there was a Muslim League. And we needed a strong unity between the Congress and the Muslim League so that together we can take on the Britishers. And it was a crucial time because Gandhiji in 1942, he was in the process of planning of Quit India and so on. So basically, what we needed was strong unity between Congress and Muslim League. And by supporting Palestine, we wanted to win the trust of the Muslims so that the Indian Muslims can unite and they can provide the resistance against the British. That is why supporting Palestine had always been in interest of the India. And also, since Middle East completely hates Israel, it is also one of our ways to reach out to Middle East. So Modi should have visited Palestine. That is what the critics are saying. Another thing, I told you Israel supported India even in the 1999 Kargil war, even though US pressure was there on Israel. So Israel is a all-weather friend. And India, repaid the favor. How? India returned the favor. So there was a Goldstone report. India has always ignored the human rights violation by Israel. Israel has been responsible for creating millions of refugees in the Palestine and surrounding areas. It has also encroached upon the land. There is a human rights violations also. It has been accused of violating international law and everything India has just ignored. Similarly, in 2015, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, it passed a resolution against Israel because it was doing war crimes. But India abstained from the voting. It said, I will not vote against Israel. India did the same thing in 2016 and 2017 also. So it's like, you help me, I help you. And since Modi has come into power, the relation between India and Israel, they have become even more stronger. And we are cooperating on many fronts. In fact, 3 senior ministers of this government have visited Israel. Home Minister Rajnath Singh, President Pranab Mukherjee, of course he is a neutral, but External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj, she has also visited Israel. In fact, our President Pranab Mukherjee and Sushma Swaraj, they visited Palestine also. Rajnath Singh did not visit Palestine, but Palestine was visited by Sushma Swaraj and President Pranab Mukherjee. And also, it's very interesting that the first time that any senior Indian minister visited Israel was during the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government when L.K. Advani, he visited Israel in 2000. So India and Israel, they are cooperating in a lot of things like agriculture, water conservation, science and technology. This is very important. Science and tech. Israel is miles ahead in science and tech. And Israel is also very strong in cyber security. So Russia, Israel, they are very good in cyber security and both are good friends. So we need to upgrade our cyber system because we are looking at digital India. We are also cooperating in trade and investment, but most importantly, it is in the defense. India is the second largest importer Israel is India's second largest foreign supplier, as simple as that. And earlier this year in April 2017, Israel defense industry, the government industry, which is called aerospace industry, it got a contract of $2 billion worth from Indian Army to manufacture surface-to-air missile system. And also last month, in May, the president of Palestine, he visited India. His name is Mahmoud Abbas. So it was a little awkward because we are so good friends with Israel. And Palestine, when Palestine President Mahmoud Abbas visited India, he was expecting India to say good things about Palestine, and same Modi did. So he's smart in that way. So Modi said that we support sovereign, independent, united and viable Palestine coexisting peacefully with Israel. So Modi did not want to be in the bad eyes of Israel. So he said coexisting peacefully with Israel. So he said that it is possible for India to have good relations with both Israel and Palestine. Now my question before I sign off for today, identify this person. He has been in news, he has been on social media, he is everywhere these days. Identify him. If you can, write in comments. Thank you for watching. I hope you are enjoying my coverage. Bye.